everyone, welcome back to my channel Dentistry Made Easy. For today is Andrew's key of occlusion. This is a subtopic from a very important topic, that is occlusion basic concepts from orthodontics. Occlusion. Occlusion, it is defined as the manner in which the upper and the lower teeth they intercuspate between each other in all the mandibular position and movement. So basically it's like how your upper and lower teeth they touch each other. So this is occlusion. When you're performing any mandibular movements like the functional movements, so at that time the manner in which they touch each other is occlusion. Of occlusion, so the six morphological characteristics of an optimal occlusion, it was determined by L.F. Andrews in 1970 when he studied 120 casts of non-orthodontic individual who never got their orthodontic treatment done, and they were having very excellent occlusion. So he determined this six characteristics, like six keys. So the first one is molar interarch relationship, mesiodistal crown angulation. The third is labiolingual crown inclination, absence of rotation, tight contacts, curve of spee, and there was another one, the seventh one, which was added later, and this one is Bolton's discrepancy. So I'm going to explain. So the first is molar relationship. So this is the first key of occlusion. So over here, it's like the mesiobuccal cusp of the upper first molar should occlude in the mesiobuccal groove. So it says, so basically this is the angles classification. So it's angles class 1 basically, and this is the first way of occlusion. Like a person, he has good occlusion when he's having class 1 occlusion, malocclusion, or you can say. So it says the mesiobuccal cusp of the upper first molar. So mesiobuccal, so mesial and the buccal side, the one which is facing outside. So mesiobuccal, this cusp, it should occlude in the mesiobuccal groove between the mesial and the middle cusp. So it's like it should occlude. So this cusp, it should touch the mesiobuccal groove between the mesial and the medial or the middle cusp of the lower first permanent molar. So this cusp, it occludes with the mesiobuccal groove. Then under this, now the mesiolingual cusp. So now you have seen the mesiobuccal. So you have seen the mesiobuccal. So the mesiolingual cusp of the upper first molar, it occludes in the center fossa. So the mesiolingual cusp. So the mesiolingual cusp, it occludes in the center fossa. So it's like over here. Now you can see. So it occludes in the center fossa of the lower first molar. Now it's like the mesiobuccal is occluding with the mesiobuccal groove. The mesiolingual cusp, it occludes with the center fossa and the distal surface of the distobuccal cusp. So you have seen mesiolingual cusp, mesiobuccal cusp. Now the distobuccal cusp of the upper first permanent molar, it should approximate and contact, if possible, the mesial surface of the mesiobuccal cusp of the lower second molar. So the distobuccal cusp of the upper first permanent molar, it should approximate and contact the mesial surface of the, so it's like basically the disto. So this is the distobuccal over here. So distobuccal cusp, it should occlude the mesial surface over here. So now you can see it's passing and it's going over here. So it should touch and contact, if possible, the mesial surface of the mesiobuccal cusp of the lower second molar. So this is the first key of occlusion. So now here, as you can see, this is class 1 molar relationship. This is like occluding properly, and this is the case of ideal, and this is non-ideal case over here. This is class 2 molar relationship, in which you can see the maxilla is way ahead of mandible. So this is class 2, which is not ideal. So this is malocclusion. The next angulation, that is the mesiodistal tip. So it refers to the angulation of the long axis of the crown. So now you don't confuse it with, as it says, it's crown angulation. So now you're referring it to the angulation of the long axis of the crown. So it's like, and not whole of the tooth. So it's the angulation of the long axis of the crown. The long axis of the crown, it refers to the imaginary line which is drawn through the most prominent labial or buccal surface of the crown. So you're drawing an imaginary line. Long axis. So the long axis is an imaginary line which is drawn through the most prominent labial or buccal surface of the crown. So the long axis for all teeth except molar, it is judged to be, so this is like where exactly your long axis will be. So it is basically at the mid developmental ridge, which is the most prominent and the centermost vertical portion of the labial or buccal surface of the crown. And for the molars, it is identified by the dominant vertical groove of the buccal surface. So this is where you will find the long axis basically. So in normal dentition, the gingival portion of the long axis of each crown, it should be more distal to the incisal or occlusal portion. So this is your gingival part of the crown. So as per this, so your gingival portion, it should be more distal. So now when you're drawing this long axis, so now you'll see your gingival portion is more towards the distal side. So this is the distal side and this is the mesial side. So you'll see the gingival portion is more towards the distal side. As we know that your like incisors, or for that matter, your tooth, they have this angulation where they are touching mesially and they are flared when you're even doing the teeth arrangement. At that time also you're arranging teeth in such manner like they have that angulation. So it's basically your gingival portion is more towards the distal side, and it is expressed in the degrees plus or minus. So it's like a plus reading is awarded when the gingival portion, so when the gingival portion of the long axis of the crown is distal. So this is when it is distal, so it is plus. And if it is vice versa, so it's like when the gingival portion of the long axis of the crown is mesial over here, as you can see. So this is the, it is regarded as minus. So this is the ideal case where you can see. So this is the long axis, and when your the gingival portion of it is more distal, so this is in the normal occlusion, the roots of the anterior teeth, they are inclined slightly distally in relation to their crowns. And this is non-ideal case where there is like abnormal angulation and reverse angulation. That is, the crowns are tipped distally, creating midline diastema. So in this case, you'll see there's this midline diastema. So this is the crown angulation, which is the second key of occlusion. The labiolingual or buccolingual inclination. So this is the crown inclination. So this is the third key to the normal occlusion, and that is crown inclination, and that was angulation. So how it is angulated, and now this inclination. It refers to the labiolingual or buccolingual inclination of the long axis of the crown when it is viewed from the mesial and the distal surface. So a tooth is said to have a positive crown inclination if the gingival portion of the crown is lingual to the incisal portion. So now over here. So it's like, again, it has this minus and plus, positive and negative. So it is, a tooth is said to have a positive crown inclination if the gingival portion of the crown is lingual to the incisal portion. And minus is given when the gingival portion is labial to the incisal. So over here, as you can see, it is more towards inside. And over here, like to maintain that proper overjet and overbite. So it's like to maintain that proper overjet. So you should have this crown inclination, and it is determined by the resulting angle between a line 90° to the occlusal plane. So it is determined by the resulting angle between the line which is 90° to the occlusal plane and a line which is tangent to the middle of the labial or the buccal clinical crown. And maxillary incisors, they are basically positive. Now when you are like, again, you're doing your teeth arrangement, at that time the way you arrange your maxillary incisors, you have that proclination, so they have this positive. Now that proclination, it means your gingival portion is more towards the lingual side, so the gingival portion is lingual to the incisal portion, so you're placing it in that manner. But now when you're arranging your mandibular incisors, so they have this negative because the way you arrange them. Now over here, as you can see, this is a normal ideal occlusion. So you're arranging it such that they should have the proper overjet and overbite. So the mandibular incisors, they have negative, and posteriors, they have negative crown inclination. So this is the third key, absence of rotation. The fourth key of occlusion, that the teeth, it should be free of undesirable rotations. The posterior teeth, if rotated, it would occupy more space than normal. So it's like if your posteriors, they are rotated. So in normal occlusion, there should be no rotations. So the diagram, it exhibits the rotation of the premolars and the molar. So here, as you can see, so this is the distolingual or the mesiobuccal rotation of the premolar, and this is the mesiolingual or distobuccal rotation. So basically it's like when your posterior teeth, they are rotated, they occupy more space than normal. Likewise, a rotated anterior teeth, they occupy less space. So if it's like if your incisors, your anteriors, they are rotated, they'll create space. But when your posteriors, so your molars are rotated, they'll occupy more space. So the fourth key is there should be no rotation to have proper occlusion. Tight contact. Without exception, the contact points in the normal occlusion should be tight. So it's like this. There should be tight contacts. There should be no spacing or overcrowding that should be present. They should have proper contacts. Is the curve of Spee. Now, in the normal occlusion, the occlusal plane, it should be flat, or it should be ideally slightly curved, and it should not exceed 1.5 mm. So what is like the curve of Spee? So they are the imaginary occlusal planes. So curve of Spee is nothing but this. Curve of Spee, it is the anterior posterior curvature of the occlusal surface. So it's like this curve, it is displayed in the sagittal plane or in anterior posterior. So this is a sagittal plane or anterior posterior view. And in this, it is like a line, it is drawn at the tip of the lower teeth cusp, and the following, like it's like they start from the incisors and they follow all the cusps of the teeth, then they touch the cusp of the premolars, they touch the cusp of the molars, and they continue as an arc through the condyle on either side. So this is the anterior posterior curvature of the occlusal surface. The curve of Spee, if it is extended posteriorly, it forms a circle of 4 inches radius, which is passing through the condyle. So it forms an arc or a radius. So it's like when you're drawing this curve of Spee, it's this line which touches the occlusal surface and it forms an arc. So in normal occlusion, it should be flat. So it's like in normal occlusion, it should be flat, or it should be slightly curved, and it should not exceed beyond 1.5 mm. So the flat plane, it should be the treatment goal. So it's like this should be your treatment goal. So this is curve of Spee, how it passes. And when you're doing orthodontic treatment, so it should be flat. Now there is a natural tendency for the curve of Spee to deepen with time. For the lower jaw, grows downwards. Now, as you know, your lower jaw, it grows downwards and forwards, and sometimes it grows faster and continues longer than that of your upper jaw. And this causes the lower anterior teeth, which are confined by the upper anterior teeth. Now, as we know, the way we arrange, so your lower anterior, they're confined by these upper anteriors. But when the growth of your lower jaw is fast and longer than the maxillary, then what happens is it results in crowding of the lower anterior teeth, and there can be deeper overbite and a deeper curve of Spee. So over here now you can see, so this is a deep curve of Spee which results in more confined area for the upper teeth. So this is a flat plane, and this is a reverse curve. So this is a deeper curve, this is a flat which we actually want, and this is a reverse curve. So this is the curve of Spee, the sixth key of occlusion. And the last one was the Bolton's discrepancy. So when we are doing model analysis, so basically what we do in this is we measure the mesiodistal width of all the teeth, and it is considered as the seventh key of occlusion. So basically what you're doing in Bolton's is you measure the mesiodistal width of all the teeth. So you're writing it in mm. For example, your 1 was 10 mm, so you're writing it 10, then this one was 8 mm, like so on. So you're writing, like you're calculating it, and then you're writing all the values in this box, and then you're dividing it. So you're dividing the mandible upon maxilla to see the overall ratio. So what you do is the calculation which you have, like the which, now it's like you have calculated each value of it, and then you add all of them, and this is the sum of your mandibular teeth, and then you divide it with the sum of your maxillary and into 100, so it gives you a percentage, and that is the overall ratio. And same you do for anterior ratio, and there are many more formulas which you like use in this Bolton's discrepancies. So basically why we are doing this is we are seeing the discrepancy between the maxilla and the mandible. So it's like, so that the tooth size of the maxillary and the mandibular arch, it should match for the proper overjet and the molar relationship without any spacing or crowding. So your size of the tooth, it will determine how good the occlusion is. If your size of maxillary teeth, they are way too big than the mandible, then obviously it will create malocclusion. So basically this is the Bolton's discrepancy or ratio what you're doing, and this is the seventh cue of occlusion, in which you're just seeing the discrepancy of the arch, how your tooth size is. And these are the 7 keys of occlusion, Andrew's 7 key of occlusion. And that was it. Thank you so much.